Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SUBOVERLAND with Sarah. And today I am bringing the episode that I've been promising for a few weeks now, and that is the pros versus cons with camping, car camping in the SUBOVERLAND inside, or camping in a pop-up tent by 4x4 Colorado, which is on my husband's Tacoma, which I steal whenever I need to take it. So I'm gonna get into the nitty gritty of when I choose to take my pop-up tent on the Tacoma versus when I'm taking the van conversion, the Suburban. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so honestly, I'm gonna start the video off with this. I don't think either are the right choice or the bad choice. I am very just open to all the different possibilities that they both bring, and each of them has a little bit of a pro in one category or a con in another. So like I said, the pop-up tent on the Tacoma is by 4x4 Colorado. It's hardtop triangle pop-up tent, and it cost about $2.2 thousand, maybe 2.3 when factoring in shipping. We bought it in 2023, so it's been a couple years now that we've had it, and I do like it a lot. The time to set up the pop-up tent is about, honestly, setting up only takes 2 minutes, truly. Of course, you have to make the bed and everything inside, and I'll get into more of that later, but just popping the tent up is really quick. However, when you're car camping, there is no setup. You're literally, your bed is there, and specifically with the Suburban, because the SUBOVERLANDs, how they're made, they're so big and spacious, I try to keep all of my bags and packing stuff that I'm bringing with me on the seats rather than in the bed. So if I'm driving late into the night and I just want to crawl into the back, essentially, I don't even have to move anything. So first pro versus con, I would say pro, the SUBOVERLAND takes 0 minutes to set up, and the pop-up tent takes 1 or 2 minutes, which, honestly, you're doing pretty good with both of those. Of course, setting up a tent is going to take much longer, so that's originally why we got the pop-up tent, was just so we didn't have to set up our tent anymore. Okay, and also then taking down. Time frame wise, of course, again, in the SUBOVERLAND, I really just make the bed and take off, so it's maybe 1 or 2 minutes. With the pop-up tent, taking down does take a little longer than setting up. There are always little pieces of the tent that stick out of the hard plastic, and we always have to shove those in, essentially, and that's what takes the most time. And the pop-up tent, it's just slightly too tall for me, so when I am putting it down and popping it up to unfasten the little fasteners that hold it all together, I do have to stand on the tailgate or on the tires in order to bring it down. So my height is a factor. I'm 5'2". That's my one pickle with those, is I'm just short and the Tacoma is tall. Anyway. So yeah, time to take down, I would say, takes 5 minutes with the pop-up tent, 0 minutes with the SUBOVERLAND. I'm gonna get into comfortability and kind of space. I do think both options are so comfortable. I actually sleep so well in both. The mattress in the SUBOVERLAND and the mattress in the pop-up tent are honestly neck and neck. I couldn't really say which one is comfier. Maybe I would lean slightly towards SUBOVERLAND. It is a thicker mattress than the pop-up tent one we specifically have. It's a little thinner, and sometimes after it's been a couple nights, I do feel the hardness on my hips in the pop-up tent. I am not complaining though. I really, really love it, and it's comfy, and it's so much comfier than one of my little air mats that I blow up in my tent. The SUBOVERLAND, I don't. I feel like that mattress is really, really comfortable. And in the SUBOVERLAND, I feel like there is more room. Since we have a triangle pop-up tent, it's not that I feel claustrophobic in there, but it is kind of tight, turning around and moving. You really only have the opening of the triangle to do that, because the bottom really is shorter, and we sleep with our feet to the shorter part and then our heads to the top part. With the dogs, I feel a little bad because they do kind of stay by our feet and stay in the short part, so it's kind of hard for them to stand sometimes, but they also just, you know, come up to, it's a little small. It is smaller than the Suburban, of course, but the beds themselves are the same size. So with that being said, the SUBOVERLAND, I feel like it's a little more comfortable specifically for us with the 2 dogs, because then the dogs can go into the front 2 seats or the middle 2 seats, and we can have the bed all to ourselves, which is really nice. And they do that because they get pretty hot with us in the tent. They are pretty stuck. And yeah, so I guess slightly leaning towards comfortability with the SUBOVERLAND. So on the topics of our dogs, this is this is the second biggest gripe I have with tent camping. So with the dogs, getting them into the pop-up tent can be tricky, especially if I'm alone. I actually have never done that alone. I haven't camped with just the dogs in the pop-up tent alone because I don't know if I can get them up. It would require me lifting them fully over my head, because our pop-up tent, the only way to get in is by using the ladder, and my dogs do not know how to climb a ladder. I do know they have cloth fill ladder things inside the ladder, but the ones I've seen are like $200 or $300, and I haven't quite justified buying that. So for now, we do not have one of those cloth things. I know that could be a solution, but my one dog, Apollo, I think I've let you guys know, he's from the shelter and he has a phobia of getting picked up. And there's been multiple times he's bypassed getting picked up by us and has just fully jumped out the roof tent. And of course that could lead to like broken paws or legs. So thankfully nothing like that has happened, but having the dogs with the pop-up tent, it's a little tougher. Of course, with the SUBOVERLAND, you guys have seen them jump in and out easily. That's way more convenient. So dog-wise, if you have a dog who can't climb ladders, which I don't think most can, car camping in the Suburban is much, much easier than doing the pop-up tent. My husband, Kelby, and I will do little handoffs where I'm in the tent, he hands them off to me, and I like bring them in all the way. But there's always the fear of them jumping out unexpectedly, and that can be dangerous. So another pro to the SUBOVERLAND over the pop-up tent. Now, the absolute biggest gripe I have with the pop-up tent is how it sounds when it is windy. There have been sleepless nights when it's been windy. I'm not even exaggerating when I say when you're in a pop-up tent and the wind is over 30 miles an hour, it sounds like there is a group of 30 people banging your tent with their fists. I know some of you can relate to this. If you have a pop-up tent yourself, that sound is so miserable. The SUBOVERLAND doesn't really have that. Of course, you hear the wind and feel the wind potentially, but it's never whacking sounds because you're in, you know, a really strong framed vehicle. And a lot of you guys might say too, we'll just park the tent in the right direction so the wind goes up the triangle. Absolutely. We have done that. Wind shifts in the middle of the night, and we have found that out the hard way. So that is my I guess a lot of this is leaning towards SUBOVERLAND. I'm not trying to be biased, I promise. This is just the truth. If it's a windy night, I'm gonna grab the SUBOVERLAND. I am not gonna take the pop-up tent. That is for sure. All right, my next pro versus con is actually kind of a con for both of them. One struggle can be that with car camping in a pop-up tent or inside the car, you cannot like claim your campsite with your tent, because when you're driving and exploring throughout the day, obviously you're taking your tent with you. So that is kind of a gripe with both of them, but I guess I'll just share my workaround for that. I've done this many times. My best hack is just hang 2 or 3 hammocks around the trees around your site, or leave camping chairs too. Of course, there's a risk that it can get stolen. I feel like hammocks are a little safer because it takes a while to put a hammock away, and they're not really valuable. Either are my camp chairs, but you know, easier to grab a camp chair. But I just recommend doing that. I have done that pretty often. I don't love like leaving coolers and stuff because you never know, especially if you're in bear country, of course, never leave a cooler. But yeah, it's hard to claim your spot when your tent is your moving vehicle. So that's a gripe with the pop-up and the SUBOVERLAND. The last and final pro versus con thing, I guess it's not really a pro versus con, it's mostly just you need the certain vehicle for that certain specific adventure. It really kind of comes down to what are you doing and where are you going? I kind of shared the last time I spoke that I didn't want to take the SUBOVERLAND on a really sandy, deep sand road. Recently, I took the TACOMA instead because the TACOMA is just lighter and it does have a little more clearance than the Suburban. Now, when I look back, I kind of think the Suburban probably could have made that drive, but I was happy to have the TACOMA, and I did get stuck at our campsite and had to use Max Trax to get out. I haven't used Max Trax with the SUBOVERLAND yet, so I'll have to try that. Sorry, that kind of got off topic. But all that to say, the specific adventure I knew the TACOMA would do better on. If I can, I would much prefer having the Suburban when I have the dogs. It just feels so much more spacious. They are comfier in it. They're actually more used to the Suburban than Kelby's pickup. Kelby's pickup is just kind of slippery in back for them. So if I'm going on a dog adventure, I'm probably taking my SUBOVERLAND because we love doing that. And if I'm solo without my husband and without friends, I also would prefer the SUBOVERLAND. Something about it is just easy. It's so easy to throw the bed together and just be ready. The pop-up tent is easy to throw together, but like I kind of shared earlier, it does take me a minute to get everything put back together with the pop-up tent because I have to climb on the wheels or the tailgate every single time I put the tent away. And that's in all four corners. So, climbing up and down for it, it's a little more than just having the dogs load up in the Suburban and shutting the back. And I could even leave the bed messy, if I wanted it. I could get out of there quickly. So I do prefer the SUBOVERLAND for solo adventures, dog adventures, but then I prefer the pop-up tent when I'm doing major off-roading, longer distances, and when I am with my husband, we prefer the pop-up tent. So yeah, those are kind of the pros and cons of which I choose per what adventure. But yeah, it did kind of lead a little more pro SUBOVERLAND, and I think the pop-up tent is just it's cool, it's aesthetic, and it's modern, but it takes a little more effort and can cause issues in the wind. It also whistles if it's windy while you're driving. I have not experienced that with the SUBOVERLAND. It's, you're driving a vehicle and then you sleep inside the vehicle. There's just so many pros to having that. So I could probably talk your guys' ear off on this. Who knows how long this is already. So I will wrap it up there, but let me know what you think the pros and cons are. Would you choose the SUBOVERLAND over the TACOMA plus pop-up tent? Let me know which one you would choose if you could have either, or which one you did choose if you have them, or maybe you've experimented with them both, and which one do you prefer more? I would love to know. So thank you all again for watching, and until next time, get outside, go adventure. We'll see ya.